On August 11th, 1989, a Friday, at the moment the clock struck 2:30 a.m. The two-story wooden house of Lina's family lay silently on a small suburban street in the town of Hollow Creek, surrounded by dense rows of ancient oak trees. The night air was thick, a blend of damp earth, wild grass, and rotting wood, creating a familiar yet heavy aroma that even the sensitive could feel as a terrifying stillness. Outside the second-floor window, thin pale gray clouds drifted lazily across the sky, obscuring the faint golden moonlight, casting the garden and house walls in a blurred layer of darkness. The gnarled oak tree in the backyard drooped its aged leaves, the wind rustling through them, producing a soft whispering sound like the hush of silence, making the small room feel even more isolated. In the children's bedroom, 6-year-old Sarah lay curled up under a worn cotton blanket. She opened her eyes, her round gaze fixed on the darkness, enveloping the low ceiling with its cracks in the wood. The wall pendulum clock ticked steadily. Tick dot dot dot, tock dot dot, dot dot dot, tot dot dot dot, dot, echoing through the narrow space. Each beat was like a silent knife slicing through the air, striking Sarah's heart with a vague but certain fear. Light from the street lamp filtered through the yellowish lace curtains, creating patchy streaks on the scratched wooden floor. On the opposite wall, children's pictures hung crookedly, the cartoon animals now blurred, appearing to sway in the darkness, transforming the familiar room into a distorted space, almost like a nightmare. Sarah felt a chill sweep through her body as the pale light from outside the window slanted in. She sat up, surveying her surroundings, her eyes following the small bed of her 4-year-old sister, Lina, who was sleeping peacefully. But instead of the familiar figure, Sarah suddenly saw a bizarre image. A tall black shadow, wearing a pointed high hat, standing right beside Lina's bed. The figure had no clear details, just a solid black mass but moving fluidly and powerfully. Sarah's heart pounded quickly, but she couldn't cry out. The black shadow bent down, picking up Lina in absolute silence. Each step they took through the bedroom left a chilling trail on the wooden floor, making Sarah clearly feel every footfall, every heavy breath, though she heard nothing else but the clock and the leaves brushing against each other when the black shadow completely disappeared through the open window. Only faint fingerprints remained on the window frame, a small cigarette ash falling onto the sill. Like the first evidence of an inexplicable crime, the room space became absolutely quiet, only the wind whistling through the door crack and Sarah's rapid breathing. The smell of tobacco mixed with the old paint of the window made the room heavy and haunting. Looking around, Sarah saw everything still exactly as before. The old wall with horizontal cracks, the crooked animal picture, the small toys scattered on the floor. But that familiar feeling had completely vanished. The space seemed distorted, time stretched endlessly. Everything from the wind sound, musty smell, pale light, to the shrinking of her body merged into a real fear. The bedroom grew colder as wind from the open window blew in, making the lace curtains flutter like invisible arms. Under the dim light, the objects on the table, children's books, cloth dolls, all seemed to tremble, reflecting the horror Sarah was experiencing. She felt her hands go numb, her heart pounding as if it wanted to jump out of her chest, while her eyes stayed fixed on the window frame where Lina had disappeared. Outside, the garden was submerged in darkness, the old oak rustling in the wind. The tall black shadow slowly moving toward the garden's edge, carrying Lina. Small stones, dry leaves, and wet grass glistened under the street lamp light spilling down, creating patchy bright paths as if recording the movement traces of the two beings in the night. Not a single footstep sound, only a slight vibration from the ground, making the kidnapper's presence bizarre and surreal. For the next few minutes, Sarah still lay on the bed, eyes wide open, body trembling, silently witnessing the empty space where her sister had just been carried away. Time passed slowly, each second endless. The pale street lamp light casting on the walls and floor exaggerating every detail. The small ash mark on the sill, faint fingerprints on the window frame, The leaves in the garden fluttering like ghosts, Sarah clearly sensed something changing in the air. It was heavy, damp, and the acrid smell of tobacco dug deep into her nose, making the room feel locked in an endless moment where she could no longer distinguish between reality and dream. The darkness became thicker, denser, seeping into every corner of the room. Sarah's small eyes had to adjust constantly to try to catch every movement. But the black shadow in Lina had completely vanished, leaving only oppressive silence from the window. The street was deserted like a forgotten scene. Other houses sank in darkness, street lamps casting faint golden halos on the wet sidewalk, but no sign of life existing. Only the old oak rustling, the smell of damp earth and rotting wood, creating a stillness both familiar and strange, both safe and threatening. Sarah, though small, could still sense that her sister had been pulled out of the safe world, the house. Every tiniest detail, scratches on the floor, the soaked windowsill, the unextinguished cigarette ash, faint fingerprints on the glass, became initial evidence for an inexplicable crime, leaving in this space a feeling both numb and chilling. The night of August 11th, 1989, at Lina's family home ended in absolute heavy silence, where everything stood still, but the feeling of being watched still lingered. Sarah still curled up on the bed, eyes wide open, unable to sleep, unable to look away from the empty window. The room was no longer a shelter. It had become the initial crime scene where every trace, every detail, told a horrifying story that no explanation could lessen. Night dew still lingered on the old oak leaves in the front yard, each water drop seeming to pause in midair before silently falling to the damp ground. Faint morning light filtered through the faded cream curtains, creating patchy streaks on the scratched wooden floor and old tables and chairs. Once the familiar living space of Lina's family, the air in the living room was thick, heavy, mixed with old wood smell, peeling paint, and damp earth, making anyone entering feel a silent but distinct pressure, as if the room was holding on to the memory of a tragedy that had just occurred. The room was empty, except for a few items still scattered on the floor. A worn brown armchair next to the wooden table, children's books jumbled, a few small doll pieces fallen sporadically. Scratches on the wooden floor gleamed dark under the morning light, highlighting every footstep from the night. On the ceiling, cracks ran long, drawing gray lines like unhealed wounds, seemingly reflecting the cracks in the house itself and the family life. When the first police team arrived, black shadows from their bodies stretched across the floor, mingling with the pale light, creating a series of flickering dark and bright patches. Each police member moved slowly, carefully observing every detail in the room. One officer bent down to check stains on the floor. Another examined the cigarette ash under the windowsill, while others noted faint fingerprints on the window frame where Lina had disappeared the night before. The space remained quiet, only the sound of pen on paper, shoes stepping on the floor, and the old clock ticking steadily, emphasizing the silence and the unease enveloping everything. Lina's mother, a woman in her 30s, her face gaunt from sleeplessness and worry, stood silently in the middle of the living room. Light slanted through her long, loose brown hair down to her shoulders, highlighting faint wrinkles at the corners of her eyes and furrows on her forehead. Her breathing was labored, mixed with a light sweat smell from stress. She led the police team through the living room, pointing out each detail, the position of the children's beds on the second floor where Lina had slept, the cigarette ashtrays on the sill, scratches on the floor that could be signs of a struggle or sudden movement in the night. While recording details, the police noticed signs that didn't match the initial description. Fingerprints on the window were clearly from an adult hand, tall and strong, but not belonging to anyone in the family. The unextinguished cigarette ash, the strong tobacco smell in the air, completely contrary to the family's no-smoking habit in the house. The scratches on the wooden floor weren't from normal activity. They had clear shapes and directions, suggesting quick and violent movement. The mother, while giving her statement, emphasized tension about someone who might have threatened her before, Mark, the ex-lover who had just broken up violently. The history between her and Mark was recorded in detail, arguments, serious threats, and the haunting words about taking away the most precious thing. The police noted carefully, as this statement was not only evidence of suspicion, but also a key clue to potential motive. The mother stood straight, hands clenched, eyes red, but her tone clear and firm. Her presence in the living room, under the dim morning light, became both vulnerable and resolute, like a witness trying to protect the truth in a high-pressure context got in the living room. Every object seemed to witness the horror that had just passed. The old wooden table with its deeply scratched surface, children's books scattered on the floor, the armchair with its tilted back, all became living evidence, reminding of the activities from the night, every movement, every action, every detail. Light slanting through the curtains created bright and dark patches on the floor and walls, highlighting every small trace. As if wanting to recount the entire event without words, the police began asking the mother questions about the family's relationship with Mark. While checking external data, times and places Mark had recently appeared, ability to access Lina's house, and any physical evidence that could be related. They noted clues, fingerprints not matching family members, unextinguished cigarette ash, and scratches on the wooden floor. These details, when combined, formed a preliminary crime scene diagram where every trace pointed to the possibility of an outsider directly involved in the disappearance. While recording the scene, the police noticed small but unusual details. Thin dust on the bookshelf, disturbed. The table lamp slightly tilted. Some children's toys shifted. All these details weren't caused by children. They indicated the presence of an adult moving in the living room at night, operating carefully, but still leaving traces. The police compared these traces with what the mother provided, cross-referencing with the history of the relationship between her and Mark, and step-by-step sketching possibilities of what happened. The living room space became more tense, as morning light slanted through the curtains, highlighting every line on the ceiling, walls, floor, and objects. Every scratch, every disturbed dust particle, every small cigarette ash became valuable as living evidence, as if present to remind that Lina had disappeared under the hand of a stranger. The space was not just a physical crime scene, but also carried the energy of fear, loss, and mental tension of those involved. The mother continued providing detailed information about Mark's recent behavior, threatening calls, sudden appearances outside the window, violent attitude, and the emphasized words about wanting to take away the most precious thing. Each detail was carefully noted by the police because in a true crime context, statements like this were not only indirect evidence, but also painted a clear motive. Someone who had tense emotional relationship, just broken up, full of violence and threats, likely to become the main suspect. While recording this statement, the police also closely observed the mother, tense body, searching eyes around, every movement reflecting a chaotic but resolute psychology. They recorded every tiniest detail, the way she clenched her hands, the way she breathed deeply, the way she moved lightly around the living room. All were valuable data to understand how a witness reacts under pressure and to assess the reliability of the statement outside the living room. Morning light shone on the garden and the path leading to the house, highlighting every wet footprint, small disturbed stones, and shadows of police moving back and forth. The contrast between daylight and the traces from the night created a surreal feeling, the scene both familiar and bizarre, where every physical detail became evidence, where the real story mixed with chilling and uneasy sensations. The police team completed recording and photographing the scene. They categorized traces, numbered each physical evidence, and compared with the mother's statement. In the process, a preliminary case diagram began to form. Traces from the night, tense relationship with Mark, physical clues in the living room and on the second floor window, all pointing to the possibility of an outsider directly intervening in the disappearance. when everything seemed recorded. The living room still retained its heavy silence. Morning light through the curtains highlighted every small detail. Scratches on the wooden floor, cigarette ash, faint fingerprints, scattered children's books. This silent space was like waiting for the next investigation steps, ready to reveal more details if observed carefully. Through initial analysis, the police determined that the main suspicion pointed to Mark. History of violence, threats, and ability to access the house all made him the central figure in the investigation diagram. All physical evidence, scene, and statement created a realistic, reliable picture of the event. Lina had disappeared under the intervention of an adult, with motive possibly directly related to the previous violent emotional relationship. The living room, under morning light, became a symbol of the case, where physical evidence met psychological evidence, where material space reflected fear and loss, where every detail, even the smallest, held meaning in recreating the event and identifying a suspect. Every action, every footstep, every glance was carefully recorded, creating a complete scene for the next investigation steps. 10 a.m. Friday, August 11th, 1989, the children's interrogation. The room at Hollow Creek Police Station had a cold appearance, designed simply but somewhat indifferent. Walls painted pale blue. Shiny tile floor, fluorescent lights shining evenly throughout the room. A long wooden table and hard plastic chairs placed in the center, with no decorations other than some crooked children's pictures in the corner wall, meant to create friendliness for children, but now seeming strange and alien. The air was still, heavy with disinfectant smell and old paper from case files, making anyone entering feel both normal and uneasy. 6-year-old Sarah was led into the room, walking slowly on the cold tile floor, each step echoing clack in the silent space. Fluorescent light shone on her thin brown hair, highlighting messy strands, small wrinkles at the eye corners, and furrowed forehead from stress. She was still not over the horror from the terrifying night, eyes wide open, glistening with tears. Looking at every small detail, table and chairs, window, wall corner, and the police officers standing silently observing. Detective Harris, leading the interrogation, was a middle-aged man with bright but stern eyes, wrinkles clearly on his forehead and around his eyes from years investigating child cases. He observed Sarah from a sufficient distance, not directly pressuring, but still fully controlling the situation. Every gesture, every facial expression of the girl was noted by him. From the way Sarah clenched her hands tightly, the way she fidgeted in the chair, to every second she breathed rapidly, reflecting the level of mental panic when asked to recount the event. Sarah firmly pointed out the image of the tall black shadow, wearing a pointed high hat that she called the Wizard Hat Man. Her eyes were serious, lips pressed tight, body shrunk, but not leaving the chair, showing an unusual determination. The police clearly observed the child's tension and panic. Fast heartbeat, tense facial muscles, trembling limbs. Every small detail was recorded, messy hair strands lightly flying with each movement. Light reflecting on glistening eyes, creating a surreal feeling, almost as if Sarah was recreating the scene from the previous night. Detective Harris noted the statement while observing other clues in Sarah's account. The emphasis on the tall hat, the black shadow, the kidnapper's movement, and the chilling, silent sensation she described. Every detail was carefully analyzed: position, shadow size, estimated height, behavior, observation time, all compared with physical evidence at the scene. Fingerprints on the window, cigarette ash on the sill, scratches on the wooden floor. However, during recording, Detective Harris displayed professional skepticism. He understood that a child's testimony, especially in a state of panic, could be influenced by imagination or excessive stress. The image of the Wizard Hat Man might be a psychological manifestation, a way children tried to describe the black shadow that carried Lina away in the night, but not precise physical data. He considered all factors: Sarah's age, level of panic, real experience, and the possibility of combining imagination with nighttime memory got meanwhile. The interrogation room space became silent and oppressive. Fluorescent light reflected on tables, chairs, tile floor, and empty walls, creating disjointed bright and dark patches, as if dividing space and time. Every small sound, the pen scratching notes, paper rustling, the wall clock ticking steadily, was noticed by the police officers. Each sound and visual detail heightened the surreal and pressured feeling, emphasizing the tension Sarah and the investigation team were enduring. Detective Harris decided not to focus on the child's imagined testimony, but maintained the main suspicion on Mark, the ex-lover, who had just broken up violently. The history of conflict, threats, and ability to access Lina's house on the night of the incident made Mark a key investigation target. He directed officers to record Sarah's statement in detail, but simultaneously expand the investigation, compare physical traces, check Mark's movement history, see OLLECT peripheral evidence from neighbors and potential security cameras in the interrogation room. Sarah continued describing the Black Shadow's actions, walking posture, way of carrying Lina, how the shadow appeared and disappeared through the second floor window. Each detail was recorded by the investigator and compared with observations from the scene the previous night. Scratches on the wooden floor, cigarette ash, and fingerprints were all linked to the account. But Detective Harris still emphasized that the wizard image might not be direct evidence, but a child's interpretation of a real violent act. While the interrogation proceeded, the room space maintained its frightening silence. The pale blue walls, cold tile floor, fluorescent lights all contributed to a surreal atmosphere where every small movement, from Sarah fidgeting in the chair to the investigator's tense expression, became significant. Every detail was recorded and analyzed. Distance between chair and table, the girl's viewpoint, light shining on eyes and hair, all important data to accurately recreate the event. At the end of the session, Sarah was let out, her small footsteps still echoing clack on the tile floor. Detective Harris noted everything fully and prepared the next investigation plan. Focus on collecting physical evidence about Mark, analyze scene clues, and check if other witnesses could provide additional data. The interrogation room returned to absolute silence. Only the dim fluorescent light casting on the walls, cold tile, and crooked children's pictures, witnessing an important part of the Lina disappearance investigation. Space, light, evidence, and child's testimony combined to create a realistic but haunting picture. The case was not just a disappearance, but a series of surreal events where children's imagination, memory, fear, and physical evidence intersected, creating a complex investigation direction requiring caution, logic, and sensitivity from the police team. August 12, 1989, the suspect. Interrogation room at Hollow Creek Police Station had a stern atmosphere, with walls painted pale gray, shiny tile floor reflecting fluorescent lights shining evenly throughout. Cold light shone directly from the ceiling, creating sharp shadows on the hard wooden table and metal chairs. The air was thick with disinfectant mixed with dampness from old paper files stacked in the corner. Every footstep echoed clack on the tile, emphasizing the oppressive silence where every detail was observed. Recorded and analyzed. Mark, the main suspect in Lina's disappearance, was led into the interrogation room. He was tall, muscular, but his rigid face and cold eyes reflected mental tension and caution. His simple clothing, wrinkled white shirt, dark jeans, reflected normality contrasting with the heavy suspicion surrounding him. When sitting in the chair facing the investigators, Mark maintained a straight posture, hands on thighs, eyes looking straight ahead but still reflecting sharp observation of every room detail. The police officers, including Detective Harris, stood around the table, noting and observing every gesture, breath, and fidget of Mark. They noticed the combination of tension and calm, the way Mark breathed slowly, finger movements, eyes glancing at surveillance cameras. and lips pressed tight when hearing questions. Every detail was thoroughly analyzed because, in child cases, the suspect's psychology and gestures could be more important evidence than words. As soon as the interrogation began, Mark provided information about his location and time during Lina's disappearance. He was confirmed to be at a rehab camp about 45 minutes drive from Hollow Creek, with many witnesses, strict entry-exit schedules, and hourly roll calls. The investigators quickly checked the rehab records, schedules, attendance signatures, present witnesses, surveillance cameras. All data confirmed Mark could not leave the camp on the night Lina disappeared, meaning his alibi evidence was nearly indisputable. The interrogation room space became oppressively silent. Cold fluorescent light shone directly on the wooden table, highlighting tense faces of investigators and suspect. The wall clock ticked steadily, as if measuring time passing without allowing anyone to miss a detail. Disinfectant smell remained heavy in the room, mixing with old wood and file paper smells, creating a surreal and tense feeling where every detail became important to recreate the entire event. Detective Harris analyzed every alibi detail, time, witnesses, roll call schedule, monitoring position, and confirmed Mark could not leave the camp undetected. Other investigators compared this data with scene evidence, fingerprints on the second floor window, cigarette ash under the sill, scratches on the living room wooden floor, and Sarah's statement about the wizard hat man. This combination created a paradox. The main suspect had motive and violent history, but nearly perfect physical alibi evidence, causing the investigation to hit a dead end, while Mark provided alibi information. Investigators still recorded every gesture and psychological reaction. The way he pressed his lips, slight fidgeting in the chair, and eyes glancing around the room were all noted. These behaviors not only reflected tension, but also provided data on the suspect's honesty level and emotional manipulation ability. This alibi evidence changed the entire investigation direction. Previously, Mark was considered the top suspect due to his violent relationship with Lina's mother, prior threats, and access to the house. However, with rehab camp data, the investigation team had to reconsider all hypotheses. Who actually accessed Lina's house on the night of the incident? And was there another outsider, not directly related to the family, who committed the act? The interrogation room became silent, but pressure did not decrease. Every police officer focused on observing and recording, light shining on table items, leftover morning teacup, scattered case files, and the suspect's smallest facial expressions. This surreal space made every detail, even small, valuable in recreating the event and continuing the investigation. At the end of the session, Mark was led out of the room, steady footsteps on the tile. Light slant through his body, creating long shadows on the wall. The investigators sat back, discussing new investigation directions. The interrogation room returned to absolute silence. Only fluorescent light, reflecting on tables, chairs, and files, reminding that the case was not over, and every detail remained an important clue. The second official investigation day ended with a clear paradox. The main suspect had motive but perfect alibi. The scene and statements still contained many unsolved clues, and the Lina disappearance case fell into temporary deadlock, requiring the investigation team to expand scope, search for witnesses, new physical evidence, and thoroughly analyze every detail to continue the direction. The police station space, with cold light, gray walls, reflective tile floor, and stacked files, became a symbol of temporary deadlock in the case. All evidence recorded, but still insufficient to solve the mystery, and the shadow of truth still lurking, awaiting the investigation team's next steps. Monday, August 14th, 1989. The forensic laboratory in the basement of Hollow Creek Police Station was arranged with cold white light shining evenly from the ceiling, creating disjointed bright and dark patches on the glossy concrete floor. Heavy disinfectant smell mixed with plastic from electronic equipment and preservation chemicals created a sterile yet oppressive feeling. On shiny stainless steel shelves, sample jars, plastic boxes, and rubber gloves were carefully arranged, each with numbered labels and detailed accompanying files. Detective Harris and a group of investigators stood around the central analysis table, where evidence collected from the August 11th, 1989 night scene was placed. Fingerprints on the second floor window frame, cigarette ash under the sill, and small fabric fibers left on the wooden floor. Fluorescent light reflected on safety goggles, creating sparkling bright patches on the investigators' tense faces, making the scene surreal and pressured, as if time slowed for all details to be meticulously observed. The window fingerprints, mostly blurred and lacking clear ridges, were scanned, digitized, and compared with the city's criminal database. Initial results made the investigation group slightly frown, no match with any criminal records. Every fingerprint detail, from whorls, arches to small skin indentations, was carefully examined. This eliminated many potential suspects while opening the possibility that the kidnapper was someone without prior convictions, never contacted by the legal system or familiar with the victim's family but not initially suspected. Simultaneously, the cigarette ash was chemically analyzed to determine type and brand. Results showed it was Red Eagle, a common brand easily bought at any city grocery store. Though not rare, this type became an important piece. It proved the intruder likely smoked and left unintentional traces. The investigation team compared with surrounding witnesses, neighbors who saw someone smoking near Lina's house on the incident night, repair workers or friends who might smoke indoors. Every small detail was recorded, numbered, and linked to individual files. The laboratory space became more surreal as white light shone on the smallest samples, fabric scraps from bedding, dust particles on the windowsill, and remaining ash fragments. Each detail was examined under microscope, light reflecting on investigators' eyes and hands, making the scene move slowly, emphasizing focus and pressure in evidence analysis. Detective Harris observed every step, how investigators operated, noted, and connected each analysis result to the scene. Analysis results led to an important decision: expand the investigation scope. Instead of focusing on old suspects like Mark, the Hollow Creek police began listing all familiar people who had been present or could enter Lina's house. They screened friends, relatives, close neighbors, recent repair workers, even delivery people or service staff who visited. Each individual was recorded: schedules, behaviors, habits, and any suspicious signs related to Red Eagle. Cigarettes or indoor smoking. Investigators also began analyzing connections between physical and psychological clues. Sarah's description of the tall-hatted black shadow, the girl's panic, window traces, cigarette ash, and fabric samples. They created detailed diagrams of the kidnapper's potential movement steps, combining physical data with child testimony to accurately recreate the night's behavior. Each detail was numbered, categorized, and cross-referenced with witness data to create an overall case picture. During analysis, Detective Harris observed each sample under the microscope: small cigarette ash, fine dust, and blurred fingerprints. Every detail, even nearly invisible, could become the key to a new investigation direction. The laboratory space with white light, strong disinfectant smell, and absolute silence created a tense, surreal atmosphere, emphasizing the case's seriousness. At the end of the workday, the analysis diagram was completed. Clues marked, related individuals ranked by suspicion level, and the expanded investigation plan officially approved. Detective Harris noted, need to check all familiar with Lina's family, cross-reference smoking habit information, personal schedules, and access possibilities to the scene. The laboratory returned to silence, white light reflecting on wooden tables, concrete floor, and stacked case files, as proof of patience, meticulousness, and urgency in the case investigation. The third investigation day ended with an important turning point. Physical evidence had not identified the suspect, but expanded the direction from old suspects to all familiar people, while creating a network of clues linking the scene, testimony, and physical evidence. The laboratory space retained its surreal appearance: white light on samples, files, and analysis equipment, reminding that truth still hid among the smallest details, requiring the Hollow Creek investigation team's intellect and patience. Tuesday, August 15th, 1989, Lina's mother's living room. On Tuesday morning carried a thick atmosphere of silence and reminiscence. Gentle sunlight filtered through white curtains, creating faint bright streaks on the old creaking wooden floor. The space was simply arranged. Worn beige sofa, a low wooden table with thin tablecloths, dried flower vases left over from before, and a small, dusty bookshelf. Old wood smell, photo paper, and lingering morning tea scent created a feeling both warm and oppressive, as if the space was silently witnessing everyone's actions. Lina's mother, a middle-aged woman with slightly graying hair at the roots, eyes red from worry, began flipping through old photo albums. Her hands trembled, slightly touching faded pictures, reminding of passing time and once bonded memories. The photos told stories of family gatherings, children's birthdays, and ordinary moments that seemed meaningless, but now became potential evidence in Lina's disappearance case. While flipping the album, her eyes stopped on a photo taken about 6 months earlier. In the picture, David, the repairman and gardener for the family, appeared with a thick beard and rugged face. He wore a black high-crowned cowboy hat, standing out against the green garden background and carefully trimmed rose bushes. Natural light in the photo shone on David's face, creating half shadows, making his figure mysterious. Almost like a character from fairy tales or Western legends, Lina's mother suddenly realized something. The cowboy hat David wore in the photo could be the cause of the confusion in Sarah's statement. The 6-year-old girl, in panic and through the dim light of the disappearance night, might have seen the tall hat and mistaken it for the wizard hat she described. This realization opened a new investigation direction. Could David, familiar with the family, with opportunities to access the house, and often appearing with the distinctive hat, be the mysterious figure Sarah saw on that terrifying night? The living room space became surreal under daylight. As every small detail stood out, Lina's mother's messy hair strands falling over her shoulders, light shining on small cracks in the old wooden table and fine dust floating in the sunbeams, creating a scene as if time had stopped to record this important moment of realization. Every photo in the album, every surrounding object, became potential evidence, contributing to building the overall picture of possible events. Detective Harris, invited to consult, closely observed the photo and room details, distance from the second-floor window to the garden, possible movement paths, and David's access to each room while doing repairs. Every detail was compared with Sarah's statement: black shadow height, observation position, dim light of August 11th, 1989 night, and the chilling sensation she described. Investigators noted meticulously how light shone on the tall hat, shape, and color, and the possibility of child confusion under poor lighting. Meanwhile, Lina's mother continued flipping other photos, recalling small details about David, times he wore work gloves, habit of carrying gardening tools, and how he moved around the house. Every action was linked to remaining physical clues: blurred fingerprints on the window, Red Eagle's cigarette ash under the sill, and small fabric samples. The living room space became tense but focused, where every detail, light, and scent became important data to recreate the event. Daylight shining through the second floor. Window highlighted the old frame, where Sarah once observed the black shadow. Investigators stood around, measuring distances, calculating viewpoints, and noting the possibility of children mistaking details in the dark. The living room, with dim light from curtains and reflection from the wooden floor, created a surreal atmosphere where past, present, and child's testimony intersected. The important turning point of the day was realizing that Sarah's statement about the wizard hat did not necessarily indicate a stranger or dangerous person. Instead, there was a high possibility that a familiar person like David, with his habit of wearing a distinctive cowboy hat, had unintentionally appeared in the girl's view, causing confusion. The investigation team began listing all times David appeared near the house, work hours, and other family relationships dot every photo in the album. Every wrinkle on Lina's parents, light reflecting on walls, wooden floor, and dust in the air became part of the analysis data. Detective Harris directed the team to compare with forensic records, fingerprints, and alibi clues to determine if David could access the scene during Lina's disappearance time, and if so, whether his behavior matched what Sarah described. The afternoon ended with a new investigation direction opening, emphasizing the importance of every detail. A black leather cowboy hat, an old photo, dim light of the disappearance night, and a 6-year-old child's memory. Lina's mother's living room space became surreal, light shining on the old album, fine dust floating in sun rays, and everyone's tension present in every small gesture, as if the entire case picture was being recreated, step by step, before the investigators' eyes. Wednesday, August 16th, 1989. The Hollow Creek Investigation Office on Wednesday morning carried a heavy, intense atmosphere. Fluorescent light shone evenly from the ceiling, reflecting on desks covered with files, typewriters, and primitive electronic machines, creating disjointed bright and dark patches on the glossy tile floor. The smell of old paper, printing ink, and disinfectant blended, making the space both familiar and oppressive. Ringing phones, rustling papers, and keyboard clacking created a tense rhythm, as if the Lina case itself was controlling the office's time and space. Detective Harris and the investigation team focused on David's file. The person who appeared in the photo taken 6 months ago with the distinctive black cowboy hat. Old archive papers, faded ink, release records, and criminal history files were meticulously searched. Every line of text, stamp, and signature was closely observed to find clues, possibly related to Lina's disappearance. When David's criminal record file was opened, investigators noted details. He had been convicted of theft-related crimes, served a long sentence, and was released exactly 3 months ago. Crime reports, offense times, and previous locations were compared with evidence collected from Lina's scene. A picture of David's criminal behavior gradually emerged. This man could access homes, habitually observe surroundings, and knew how to avoid suspicious signs. Simultaneously, the investigation team confirmed David's habits. He often smoked Red Eagle brand, matching the cigarette ash found under Lina's house living room windowsill. Light from the desk lamp shone remaining ash pieces in the forensic file, creating small light rays reflecting in investigators' eyes, emphasizing the link between physical evidence and suspect behavior. Every detail, from height, smoking habit, to times appearing near the house, was carefully noted. The blurred fingerprints on the second-floor window, thoroughly analyzed using modern forensic methods, were finally confirmed to match David. The investigation team compared every ridge, whorl, and small skin indentation, all perfectly matching. This moment in the office became surreal, white light shining on the table, reflecting on files, machines, and investigators' tense faces, creating a feeling as if time stopped to record the important case progress. The office space became more tense as Detective Harris synthesized clues. Sarah's statement about the wizard hat, old photo of David wearing cowboy hat, Red Eagle cigarette ash under the sill, and fingerprints matching David. Every small detail was connected into a network of linked clues, past behavior, current habits, and appearances near the victim's house. Every file sheet, paperclip, old typewriter in the room witnessed the process of discovering the real suspect. The investigation team began planning next steps, track David, determine times and locations he could appear near Lina's house during the disappearance period, and prepare potential search warrants. They created detailed diagrams, paths from the street to Lina's house, second-floor windows, and areas around the house where David could observe or access. The diagram spread on the table, light slanting, creating long shadows on paper, emphasizing the investigation's seriousness and detail. Meanwhile, investigators checked David's financial and contact records, comparing with work logs, purchase receipts, and witnesses who interacted with him. Every detail about social relationships, personal habits, And appearances near Lina's house was recorded to create a complete picture of David's ability to commit the kidnapping. The office space with cold light, stacked files, and absolute investigator focus created a surreal feeling. Every smallest detail could be the key to solving the case. The end-of-day summary showed a clear picture. David, familiar with Lina's family, had theft-related criminal history. Red Eagle smoking habit matching scene ash, and perfectly matching blurred fingerprints. All physical and behavioral clues led to one direction, opening the possibility of identifying the main suspect. The Hollow Creek office space in the late afternoon became silent, only light shining on tables, files, and equipment. Reflecting on investigators' tense faces, every file sheet, detailed evidence appeared clearer than ever, emphasizing the important turning point in the investigation. The case's pressure and tension remained intact. But the picture of the main suspect finally began to emerge, bringing the investigation team closer to the dark truth still hidden. Thursday, August 17th, 1989, evening. The old boarding house stood lonely on a small street where yellowish street lamps shone on cracked sidewalks. The brown walls peeled paint. Windows had torn curtains, and musty smell combined with cigarette smoke created a heavy, silent atmosphere where wind chimes from the eaves could be heard clinking. Police, led by Detective Harris, approached the boarding house area discreetly. Each step on old concrete, echoing clack emphasizing extreme tension. David? The main suspect was found in a small, dark room lit only by dim yellow light from a flickering ceiling bulb. The room was cluttered with toolboxes, cigarette bottles, and a wrinkled old bed blanket, creating a dark and chaotic space reflecting part of the suspect's personality and lifestyle. He stood leaning against the wall, face dusty, thick beard, and messy hair, eyes sharp as if trying to assess the situation. When police entered, David did not resist, but his eyes showed absolute alertness. He knew his actions had been monitored for days. Detective Harris read the arrest warrant, explained suspect rights, and announced detention for investigating Lina's disappearance. The boarding room space, with weak yellow light, cigarette smell, and cluttered personal items, created a surreal scene where every detail, from floor dust to wall fingerprints, became important evidence. David was led away under patrol car headlights, each step echoing on cold concrete, reflecting in broken windows and mossy wall patches. On the way to the police station, David appeared calm, but eyes fixed forward, observing every police action. Silence in the patrol car became heavy, only engine sound and investigators. Tense breathing as background for the oppressive atmosphere at Hollow Creek Police Station. The interrogation room was prepared, white light shining from the ceiling, reflecting on glossy wooden table, sturdy stainless steel chairs, and high-stacked case files. Disinfectant smell mixed with old paper and remaining cigarette smoke from David's clothes created a sterile, yet suffocating feeling. David was brought into the room, facing Detective Harris, light shining on his rugged face, highlighting hard features and fatigue lines from evading the law dot when asked about Lina's disappearance from the bedroom. David suddenly showed concern and asked information about how the girl had been harmed by someone. This question silenced the entire interrogation room. This information had not been released to anyone outside the direct investigation team, proving David might know about the scene or crime in a way that could not be normally explained. David's eyes reflected white ceiling light, creating a surreal and cold feeling, emphasizing the suspect's unusual danger and intelligence. Investigators carefully recorded David's behavior and reactions, how he observed, eyes jumping from table files to each room officer, every breath, every gesture. The interrogation room with cold white light, glossy table surface, and tension spreading from every corner created an almost surreal scene where time seemed to slow for every behavioral detail to be recorded throughout the evening. David denied all accusations, but his eyes and tight hand gripping created a contradictory feeling, a man ready to hide secrets, but simultaneously revealing details only an insider would know. Detective Harris and the investigation team noted every smallest detail, gestures, voice, breathing, reactions to Lina information to use in assessing involvement level and crime probability. The interrogation room space retained its surreal appearance as evening passed, white light shining on case files, reflecting on stainless steel chairs, on David's and investigators' faces, creating long bright streaks and disjointed shadows on the tile floor. Every smallest detail, from table dust, remaining hair strands, to Red Eagle cigarette ash on David's clothes, became important data for further analyzing criminal behavior. At evening's end, David still denied all accusations. But the question about the girl being harmed showed suspicious knowledge of the incident, opening the next investigation direction, clarify David's information source, determine if he actually contacted the scene, and assess whether the crime was premeditated or impulsive. The police station space, with cold white light, disinfectant smell, and stacked papers, became a witness to the turning point moment in the investigation, where the main suspect appeared but the incident's secrets remained intact, awaiting further analysis. Friday, August 18th, 1989, the Hollow Creek interrogation room was brightly lit by cold white light from ceiling bulbs, shining straight down on the glossy wooden table where David sat facing investigators. The enclosed space, low ceiling, smooth cold walls, combined with disinfectant smell mixed with old file paper, created pressure, almost physical pressing on everyone in the room. Case files, maps, and evidence collected from the scene were stacked high on the table. Every paper sheet, every marked line becoming a witness to the final confrontation. Investigators presented testimony from David's former cellmate, who heard him confess intent to commit the crime targeting Lina. The detailed statement, full of specifics describing how David planned, chose timing, and approached the victim, was read repeatedly to ensure accuracy. Every detail, from David's prison habits to vague mentions of a little girl, was carefully noted and placed next to physical evidence collected at Lina's house. David, initially maintaining a calm attitude, cold eyes focused on the table, began showing tension signs. Hard facial lines gradually wrinkled, shoulders slightly slumped, and eyes flashed panic. Investigators noticed his heartbeat quickening, breathing becoming rapid, and hands clenching into fists. The interrogation room, with direct white light, highlighted every gesture and psychological reaction, as if every suspect action was magnified for analysis. David finally broke under continuous evidence and cellmate testimony, agreeing to reveal Lina's location in exchange for investigators' promise, assurance about body handling and legal conditions. He pulled out a crumpled paper and scribbled a map, crooked uneven lines pointing to a remote, dense forest, once a stone quarry, now abandoned quarry. The map showed natural landmarks like trees, a small stream, and a pile of rubble, all creating a feeling of accuracy, but vague enough to increase suspense. The interrogation room space became surreal, white light shining on the scribbled map, reflecting on high-stacked files, on David's tired but tense face, on investigators' searching eyes. Every detail, from fallen hair on the table, Red Eagle's cigarette ash remaining in David's wallet, to faint stains on the map paper, became important data to prepare for scene excavation. David described small, map details with trembling pen, positions of large rocks, a leaning pine tree, a small mound near the forest edge, all reflecting his intuitive memory of the burial place. Every scribbled line, every slant on the paper was noted by investigators, compared with official terrain maps and aerial photos of the abandoned quarry area. The interrogation room was almost silent, only breathing sounds, pen on paper, and flickering reflected light from the ceiling. When the statement ended, David maintained tension, eyes quickly shifting from map to investigators, as if measuring the promise's reliability. Detective Harris noted every detail, from time David drew the map, how he described natural landmarks to psychological expressions, trembling, small forehead sweat, and clenched hands. All created a detailed picture of behavior, motive, and suspect danger level dot the interrogation room space, became a witness to the investigation's turning point moment. The main suspect provided important information about the victim's burial location, opening opportunity for police to excavate the scene and recover Lina. Cold light, stacked files, disinfectant smell, and high-pressure atmosphere all together created a surreal scene where every smallest detail became a deciding factor in bringing the case to the next step, uncovering truth, and completing the legal evidence chain. Saturday, August 19th, 1989, morning, the sky gradually brightened, weak sunlight filtering through dense tree canopies, shining on wet ground mixed with earth and decaying leaf smells. Abandoned quarry, where David indicated on the scribbled map, appeared like a natural maze with undulating mounds, large moss-covered rocks, and solitary leaning pine trees. The police team, wearing raincoats still carrying disinfectant smell from the station, moved slowly, each step crunching on dry leaves. Every eye searching every shadow, every forest crevice, terrain scanners and excavation tools were prepared. Each soil section was carefully dug, each rock gently flipped, every gesture filmed and marked. The atmosphere was heavy, tense, as if every rising dust particle could reveal secrets. Every rubble piece, every uprooted root became evidence. One officer dug deeper under the small mound, hands slightly trembling from this important moment's pressure. When slicing the final soil layer, Lina's small figure appeared, still wearing the pale pink nightgown, dirty and wrinkled under the covering earth. No pain or crying, only the ultimate silence of death. That tiny image in the remote dense forest, among rocks and tree shadows, made all witnesses shudder. Police carefully examined the scene, confirmed mudstains on Lina's clothes matching surrounding positions, checked fingerprints, Red Eagle cigarette smell lingering on soil and rocks, all creating a solid evidence chain. Every excavation step was carefully recorded, every image stored for legal process. The silent natural space, mixed with forest, earth, and morning cold smells, became a cold but honest witness to the case. 1 year later, Hollow Creek courtroom became solemn, with sunlight shining through stained glass windows, creating long bright streaks on the old patterned tile floor. Brown wooden benches, high judge's bench, cold stone pillars, all created a space both solemn and oppressive. David, in dark prison uniform, sat silently, cold face but eyes no longer sparkling as in the interrogation room. Replaced by fatigue and dejection, investigators, lawyers, and victim's family were fully present. Evidence from the forest scene, David's scribbled map, cellmate testimony, and 6-year-old Sarah's account were presented in detail, creating a complete crime picture. Courtroom footage seemed to freeze time. Every glance, gesture, file page carried the strict weight of law. The verdict was announced. David sentenced to life imprisonment. No parole possibility. The suspect's face showed no emotion, but hands clenched the chair, eyes looking down at the floor, reflecting acceptance or despair. The trial ended with heavy silence, every breath in the room echoing as a reminder of what happened. He was not a wizard, he was just a monster hiding under a normal appearance. The innocent words of a 6-year-old child were the most important clue we almost overlooked.